Throwback to that time when I was in the woods and I harvested the perfect stick pen. The pinnacle of artistic utensil and creative instrumentation. This is as good as it gets, really, when it comes down to it. I haven't used a better pen, especially when it comes to dip pens. You can sharpen it in different ways to get different pen widths. Really, you can keep sharpening it as much as you want until you run out of stick. And if you do run out of stick, you go outside and you get another stick. And you might say, Peter, but is it really still the same pen? I don't know. That's a philosophy question for another time, another class, where we talk about the stick of Theseus. But I'll say this, it will still be a stick pen, and that's the whole point of it. Look, you can buy these online. They are pretty expensive. There is a link in the description to grab one of these if you want it. They are, you know how artisanal things are these days. Those kids out in Portland, they get carried away, but sometimes that's how you can get the best art supplies. And it does, I've gone over this in the previous video, but only with the best art supplies can you make the best art. Previously, when I made a video with this pen, and it is the same pen, I made a pretty small drawing, and this time I branched out. This drawing is about 18 inches by 24 inches, and had a lot of fun. It worked pretty good. I think I was using some sort of India ink. It was pretty satisfying how it just I hate to overuse the word slather, but it kind of was slathering it on there. It was a mixture of a pen and a paintbrush. If you imagine a paintbrush that was like you used a paintbrush and then didn't rinse it out afterwards and just let the paintbrush sit there for a long time, like I often do on the rare occasions that I use paintbrushes, and it just got really hard and rigid and totally ruined the paintbrush, totally irreconcilable and unrescuable, and the paintbrush is pretty much the equivalent of a stick. And it's kind of like that sort of a paintbrush, just kind of not really a pen, but not really a paintbrush, somewhere in between. It's kind of like that. I'll admit this, I did have to dip it quite often. It didn't hold a lot of ink on it, but the ink it did have on it, it laid out on the paper quite satisfyingly. And I'm all about satisfyingly putting ink on the paper. I'm not going to go out on a limb here and say that satisfyingly is a word, but I'm not too caught up in saying that, and only saying words that are words. And in fact, as long as I say things and you know what I'm saying, then I'm fine with saying them. In fact, I'm also fine with saying things that you don't understand or that I don't understand. That happens from time to time. I'm fully aware of that. Also, one of the funnest things to do with this stick dip pen, as I found out later in the final parts of this drawing, was to do stippling. First of all, it made a nice tapping, I'm tapping on a water bottle right now, so that's not really the sound it made. Maybe more of a, no, that's close. Anyways, it made a nice tapping, thudding noise. Maybe I'll let you in on a little bit of that later in a future video. I'm not going to get into it right now. But anyways, the noise was very satisfying, but also what's the word I'm looking for? The variety of the dots it made. The first few dots after dipping it in the inkwell would always be a bit bigger, and then as you kept making dots, as the ink ran out on the tip of the pen, those would get a bit smaller, so you'd have a nice variety of different dots in your stippling. Lots of times when I stipple, I get very caught up in making all my dots the same size, which is also a very nice effect, and it's good to go in that direction sometimes, but in the other direction, a nice variety of dots has another nice different effect. You don't always have to do everything the same way or do it. There's no one right way to do things a lot of the time when it comes to art. Okay. So don't get too caught up in, figuring out how, you got to do things this way, that way, the other way, just experiment, grab a stick, grab a pen, a pencil, a dried out brush, and put something on the paper or piece of wood or the wall over there or, anything. Okay. I think you might have seen here in the video at one point, I was eating a bowl of ramen, and that was a bowl of ramen that my sister painted for me. So you can paint on pottery too. I think there's whole businesses revolving around that. Anyways, thanks for watching, everyone. I love all of you, and you're all just glorious. I'm just happy to see your shining, smiling faces once again. I can't see you really, but I have a good imagination. Okay. Okay, goodbye. Okay, goodbye.